the Middle podcast. The podcast dedicated to the music, movies, and culture of Generation X.
What is up, slackers, and welcome back to another episode of the Stuck in the Middle podcast. I am your host, Jason Eck, and I'm getting back to some basics this week because I realized I haven't done a dive into a particular year in quite some time. So what I've come to discover is that the episodes that I've had that are not related to music oftentimes don't track as well. So I really thought that music, movies, and culture would be kind of interspersed throughout all of this. But for tonight's episode, or this morning's episode, or wherever it is that you're listening to this, I'm going to focus solely on the year, but just for music. Just for music. So the last time I did a year, I believe was 1992. So that was what I called the reunion special with Carlos. And we graduated in 1992. Now, obviously, you spend 4 years in high school. I'm sure some of us spend more time or less time in high school, but normally it's a 4-year span. So when I began high school, it was September of 1988. So 1988, that is the year that we're going to talk about on this episode. Now, obviously, 1988 also had, from January to June, my 8th grade year, which is really, you have your cute little kindergarten graduation. And then depending on the school district that you live in, you might have a mini 5th grade graduation, because then you're going on to middle school or junior high school, depending on where you live. For us, it was you left 5th grade, you graduated, you go on to the middle school. And then you graduate 8th grade, go to high school. So some of the songs that are on here that we're going to talk about, I remember as being critical songs in my 8th grade year, and then some of them that just continued on into my freshman year. And certainly a number of the bands and artists that are on here are just as significant a part, just as a significant amount of my high school years. But given that this podcast has been Generation X, the artists that are on here, it's just like a murderer's row of talent. And some of them maybe didn't have longevity past this initial time period. Maybe they had a few years, 4 or 5 years. And then some of them dropped off the face of the planet. Only to find their careers reinvigorated on the nostalgia circuit, if you will. Or, in some cases, the advent of reality television, which became an obvious foray back into the mainstream for many artists, actors, musicians, what have you. So anyway, let's jump in. So because I'm dedicating the whole episode solely to 1988, we're going to go through a lot of the Hot 100. Now, sometimes I go one down. Sometimes I go down up. I thought for the case of 1988, and we're going to spend a little bit more time with the year, I'm going to go from the bottom of the Hot 100 Billboard and work our way up to number 1. Regardless, a number of the bands and artists that are on here are literally littered throughout the entire chart, which is pretty impressive. So let's start off with number 100. Oh gosh, excuse me. Number 100 is Taylor Dayne with Prove Your Love. I like Taylor Dayne, but Tell It to My Heart was the one. I'm not sure if that's on here. I just go for it. Yeah, she was a good artist for her time period. Very minimal time period. Now, number 99. Actually, number 99, 98, and 97. Holy cow. This is such a big part of my teen years. So number 99 is White Lion and Wait. This, to me, is a classic song. Now, some people will be like, White Lion? a classic, it's White Lion. They really didn't have that longevity, but for the time that they were big, they were really big. And I just remember when I first heard this, it was an interesting juxtaposition in sounds that made them a little bit different than some of the artists at the time. They had that really cool acoustic beginning to the song. Vito Bratta, by the way, killer guitar player. And for whatever reason, personalities, issues with the band, whatever it is, Vito, maybe even just fame, kind of disappeared and stopped being a part of anything related to White Lion. I'm not sure he even plays anymore. But there's also this heaviness to it that was a little bit different than some of their contemporaries. Now, if I remember correctly, Greg D'Angelo, is it Greg D'Angelo? The original drummer, I believe he was one of, if not the original drummer for Anthrax. Pretty sure that he was, or at least played with him for a time. And then James Lomenzo, bass player for White Lion, has been a recurring member of Megadeth in many of the times that Dave Ellefson has come in and out of the band. I don't believe he's back with them now. I think they signed someone else to take his place. But anyway, Wait is a love song, but it also sounds like nothing else at the time period. And I think part of it was that Mike Tramp, obviously being Dutch, gave it something different. And Vito Bratta, I look at Vito Bratta and Nuno Bettencourt as being really contemporaries of virtuoso style guitar players playing very much atypical hairband stuff with a twist, just out of their pure virtuosity. Anyway, number 99, Wait by White Lion. And quite frankly, I'm surprised it's on here. What I'm not surprised it's on here is number 98, Nothing But a Good Time by Poison. Now, I've always enjoyed Poison. Always. Right from the start. Right from when Look What the Cat Dragged In. But there was a video game commercial. Maybe it was for Rock Band. I don't know, something Xbox or PlayStation. And this song was played in it. And sometimes it's seeing things in a different context, in a different era, for a different audience, when you recognize that a song truly is part of Americana. Now, I've always thought this was a fantastic song, really great live, but Nothing But a Good Time, that opening riff. It's funny, a friend of mine just posted, it was CeCe DeVille doing a guitar solo from the Stadium Tour. Now, I've always found that CeCe, in my opinion, has always been underrated because he played a little bit more of a loose, punky style, but also had major addiction issues, as so many artists did at the time. So he was kind of looked at as being a little sloppy, little derivative, whatever it is, but people discounted his actual chops. So he's doing this solo and he's incorporating in, some Eddie Van Halen stuff and just playing his heart out. Now, his solos that he's doing on the Stadium Tour are not so different than when he was on back in the day, when he was either sober or had it under control. Really a great guitar player, and his riff writing is unparalleled because he has some of the best riffs in the history of not only hair metal, but of rock and roll. Yes, I just said CeCe DeVille has some of the greatest riffs in the history of rock and roll, period. Nothing But a Good Time is a hell of a song. It should be at all of your playlists. And I will add it to the Spotify playlist, which I have been a little bit of an absentee parent on my own playlist. But I'm going to update that, and I'm going to post it to the social media channels, so go check it out. Now, number 97, it's a bit of, it's not a guilty pleasure. It's more that it is a, how do I put this? It's a measure of, not revenge, that's not the right word, but when Van Halen split with David Lee Roth, there was definitely a split in the fan base. Now, I think when you look at what Van Halen continued to do in the quote-unquote Van Hagar era, they kept most of the fan base, or at least a good chunk of it, and continued to actually grow, sold more records, did bigger numbers with Sammy, right? I don't think that can be disputed. Now, Diamond Dave might dispute that, but Sammy will tell you they sold more. But as one of those people who did not embrace Sammy Hagar until literally a couple of years ago, I'm a slow assimilator when it comes to secondary lead singers, apparently, unless it's Faith No More. But number 97 is Just Like Paradise by David Lee Roth. I saw him on that tour. Poison was the opening act. I'm pretty sure. Maybe it was did I see him on Eat 'Em and Smile, maybe? I forget. I think I saw him on those first couple of tours, regardless. But Just Like Paradise is a little bit of a lost hit, if you will. I beseech you, if you don't remember it, go check it out. But this is when the full band, full effect, Steve Vai on guitar. Right? I mean, come on. Billy Sheehan on bass, Greg Bissonette on drums, and Diamond Dave out front. Killer live show. And this is a great song. I love it. That whole album, Skyscraper, I thought was excellent. So Dave's first couple of releases were really, really strong. And then unfortunately, the other members of the band left because Dave being Dave. Unfortunately, that band didn't stay together for very long. But for this snapshot of time, it's great to see David Lee Roth on this year-end chart. Now, number 96, I just think is funny. The reason that I think it's funny is because the guy already at this point in the 80s has already had like a 20-some-odd year career, and this was his kind of resurgence. Steve Winwood with Valerie. Now, there's another song that's on the list by Steve Winwood. I did glance a little bit that my kids love. So Steve Winwood was definitely a heavy hitter during 1988. So probably like 87, 88, 89. Steve Winwood, top of the charts. Now, number 95. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I just want a couple of these bands because they recur so often. And I'm surprised that this song is as low as it is. I'm always surprised when the ballad, the killer love song, isn't the biggest song from that band in a particular year. So here we have In Excess with Never Tear Us Apart. It's a great song. It made it onto a couple of mixtapes for a couple of young ladies back in the day. But Michael Hutchence has never been in finer voice than on this song. Everything about it, including a very 1980s saxophone solo. Great stuff by In Excess. But this was their big coming out year. I think I said in a couple podcasts ago, I mistakenly said that first In Excess record. This was like, I think, their third or fourth. I misspoke as soon as it came out of my mouth, but it was too late. I was on a roll. But Listen Like Thieves, I believe, was the prior record to this, which also had a couple of minor hits. And then you go back and, you know, they had songs like Don't Change. So they've had hits for years. But Kick was this coalescing moment. Everything just came to the surface and they became superstars. Deservedly. Because the entire record is amazing and they're on here a number of times. Cher is on here. I found someone. Cher is also so interesting because this was a weird era. I mean, what I grew up with Cher, it was with Sonny, you know? And then she was actress Cher. She wasn't really doing music as much. Then she came out, she's wearing some weird, like, cat suit, jumpsuit thing, showing everything. And it worked. It worked. You get some catchy songs. You put the whole package together. Cher, probably performing the best that she ever had as a singer. Number 93, Brenda K. Starr. I don't know. I'm sure if I listened to it, I'd know what it was. Number 92. Now, this blew my mind. Number 92. Cherry Bomb, right, by John Cougar Mellencamp. He's still John Cougar Mellencamp. I would have thought by now he was already on a John Mellencamp. But I remember when the song came out, it was such a different vibe, in my opinion. I didn't listen to all of his records, just the singles that came out, and this felt like a real departure, but a great song. So now, here's a guy who's going to be on the charts multiple times. So let's just break this down for a moment. I've already mentioned Steve Winwood and In Excess. The next guy, George Michael. This is Faith era George Michael. Is it Faith era? I think it is. Yeah, Faith. Now, talk about it's kind of an age-old story where you have a duo or a group, and there's always one guy who's the most famous, or the bigger star, or the better singer, whatever it is. So obviously Wham was George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley. But I don't think there was any doubt that George Michael was the moneymaker of that group. He puts out Faith, and it goes from Wham already being a hit machine to now he is a superstar. And at this point has become iconic. This is when you go from George Michael Wham with the feathered hair to 5 o'clock Shadow, really like a 7 o'clock Shadow, honestly, and the leather jacket and the whole vibe. Obviously still in this really interesting in-between place as far as his own identity, but he's certainly becoming who he would ultimately really be for his ending days. But here he is with Kissing a Fool. My Girl, Gloria Estefan and the Miami Sound Machine. I wasn't really listening to them as much in these days. I just moved on to other music. Doesn't mean I didn't appreciate it. Another artist who is going to be on here a couple of times. And again, I mentioned right at the top of the show, the number of icons that are on here. Whitney Houston with One Moment in Time, followed by Steve Winwood. Here he is again. Don't you know what the night can do? Followed by, I'm sure, iconic to someone, Al B. Sure with number 97 and Night and Day. I remember the name Al B. Sure. I cannot tell you what that song is. Then you have some latter era Foreigner with I Don't Want to Live Without You. I don't really remember this one. I really don't remember it at all. I'm sure if I listen to it, I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that one. But off the top of my head, not ring the bell. Now, I mentioned earlier Poison, and they're currently on the stadium tour. I was going to say arena. No, this is a stadium show. Opening act on that bill is Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. And here she is, number 85, with I Hate Myself for Loving You. Catchy tune. Good for her. Another legend coming up on the charts, Sting. You know, it's funny. A lot of people, I did the episode about U2, about people loving and hating, or both, or interchangeably having some feeling about them. I feel like Sting is one of those polarizing artists. The people who love Sting and the Police, like they really love Sting. And I will admit, you know, my father-in-law, you know, I had my wife on the show a few weeks ago. She talked about her parents listening to music, and that when they were little, music was so carefully cultivated. But he began listening to a wider palette of music as he got older. Part of it, I'm sure, is because the kids are grown. Less things to be cautious about, or just expanding his musical talent gradually. So one of the things that he had, and I remember going for a visit, and it might have even been on the local public broadcasting system, on the local PBS channel. It was this Sting concert live. He's like, oh, I really want to watch the Sting concert. And this is one of the first setups that he had with a really good TV and sound. And it was this killer performance by Sting. And I think that's why I've become an appreciator of Sting as time has gone by. There are certainly some Police records that are killer, but his solo stuff, very middle of the road, very milquetoast, so far removed from the very kind of pseudo-punk underground that they were early on. You know, some of the punks kind of say, well, they were never part of our scene. You know, they kind of were wannabe Clash in a way because they were using the island music, reggae, ska. But that concert was killer, and I had such an appreciation for Sting after that. We'll be together. Number 83, we have Paul Carrack with Don't Shed a Tear. Paul Carrack is probably best known for being the lead singer of Squeeze and, I believe, Mike and the Mechanics. So I mentioned Diamond Dave earlier. Van Halen is here with When It's Love off of Oh, You 812. I may have already mentioned this on the show, but I'm going to say it again for anyone who hasn't heard this anecdote. So David Lee Roth is on the Joe Rogan show, and they asked him the difference between Van Halen with Sammy and Van Halen with him, Diamond Dave. And I don't dare to do a David Lee Roth impression. But he says, you know, Sammy, he's a great writer. Sammy writes about love. But me ain't talking about love. You feel me? And Rogan, of course, laughs hysterically at Dave being Dave. But there are an awful lot of love songs by Sammy Hagar and Van Halen. But When It's Love, it has one of those things that when you're an arena level band, if you can get a good na 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 going, I said this early on the show, I'm a sucker for whoa whoa whoas, na na nas, yeah yeah yeahs, anything that is that call to from the band that allows for complete arena, stadium, crowd participation. I love it. So I'm a sucker for a good na 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 na. 81. Brenda Russell featuring Joe Esposito, Piano in the Dark. I would not know that song if you threw it at me. No idea. Sorry. 80. Not a band that I listen to a ton. This is not the song I know. Pet Shop Boys with Always on My Mind. I don't know what that is. I do know the next one because we were kind of sort of neighbors back in the day. Don't Be Cruel, not to be confused with a different Don't Be Cruel, but Don't Be Cruel by Roxbury's own Bobby Brown. I lived on Mission Hill in Roxbury when Bobby Brown got shot visiting the hood. And I just remember the emergency vehicles, helicopter coming overhead, which was not that typical. And I'm like, what is going on? Wasn't a news watcher. Turned on the TV. Bobby Brown's been shot. Kind of a weird thing. Number 78, The Valley Road by Bruce Hornsby and the Range. Electric Blue by Icehouse. Hey, number 76, Fast Car by Tracy Chapman. Just classic. Just a classic song. And given that it's only at number 76, and I'm looking at some of the other songs that are on here, I don't know how it's possible. Because this song was everywhere. Everywhere. And I really don't know anyone at the time who didn't think it was a great song. She's an incredibly talented artist, and that's quite a poignant song. But I would have put that way higher now. I'm sure this is all, obviously sales-based and radio play and all that, but I'm just surprised. Number 75, we have Pink Cadillac by Natalie Cole. Natalie Cole was a big hit for a while. Hey, Keith Sweat, I Want Her. Number 73, Say You Will by Foreigner. Man, I don't know this Foreigner record at all. Interesting. Guess I'll have to check it out. Sorry, Justin, if you're listening to this. I don't know. I don't know this era. Number 72, Everything Your Heart Desires by Daryl Hall and John Oates. This is 1988. I'm surprised that this is that song, that vibe is what hit in 88. It's a good song. Well, pretty much everything they do is fantastic, but coming up next, number 71. I've told you before, and I'll tell you again. Elton John. Every decade, every year, there's always Elton John. Candle in the Wind. Dedicated to Princess Diana. So Carlos, frequent listener to the show, sent me some pics of him at the Elton John show the other night. So I certainly hope you had a good time. I'm sure that you did. I'm sure Elton brings it. And what a cool show to go to. I think he said there was like 5 generations of people that he knew that were all at that show. And that's why when I mentioned that Elton John is on like every year, every decade, think about what that brings. When you have such iconic music over such a long period of time, you do build this like generational equity. Because if the songs are good, they're going to transcend generations. And obviously, we've heard a lot recently in the news about how much of the music, 90s in particular right now, but 80s, 90s, and then all the stuff that we considered already classics that the late millennials, Gen Z, etc., are really embracing. Now, part of it, there's been a lot of talk about Stranger Things going ahead and bringing songs back to the forefront. And that's great, but that's always been done. You think about it, before Stranger Things, Guardians of the Galaxy, those soundtracks are killer. But even, I mentioned before, Quentin Tarantino and the stuff that he was putting on soundtracks. Some things that were way off the beaten path and were never necessarily super mainstream. Good music is good music, regardless of the source. There are some bands that I will tell you that I absolutely loathe, but if they got a good song is a good song, and it deserves credit where it's due. So, Elton, you keep going, my man. You keep going. Next is the other Don't Be Cruel, number 70, with a band that I was thrilled to have had this resurgence at the time. Is a band that I just absolutely loved, still love, and that's Cheap Trick with their cover of Elvis's Don't Be Cruel. Weird choice to be sure, 1988, but Cheap Trick's gonna be Cheap Trick. And for the most part, they're gonna do what they want to do and what they enjoy. I'm still so fortunate, and every time they come up, I'll mention it, seeing them in a relatively modest-sized club in Boston. Just one of the pure joys of a live experience that I've ever had. Because they're just that freaking good. So if you have an opportunity to go see Cheap Trick, they're still killing it. And they just a couple years ago before COVID were doing this whole tribute to Sgt. Pepper. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Number 69. Peter Cetera with One Good Woman. No, thank you. Number 68, The Jets, Rocket to You. Yeah, I remember them, kind of. Number 67, If It Isn't Love by New Edition. Not my era of New Edition, really. 66, Catch Me I'm Falling by Pretty Poison. Catchy earworm. Number 65, oh, here we go. This is it's always interchangeable with one other song, but In Excess, again. Here they are on the charts. As big as they've ever been. But to me, their best song, my show, my opinion. New Sensation. That opening guitar strain is just beautiful and sunny. And the fact that they talk about, and the sun comes into your room, like a god, just, it's sunny sounding, this new sensation. And it sounded like nothing else. I'm sure it's all chorus or pedals or whatever, but every time I hear it, I instantly smile. And I'll be perfectly honest, at the time, I did not appreciate them anywhere near as much. I enjoyed them. I listened to them. But now I hear that song and it's just a perfect song. In structure, in sound, in style, in verse, the lyrics, all of it. It's an evergreen song for me. It is just so unfortunate that Michael Hutchence couldn't master his demons, because they'd be a band, in my opinion, doing stadiums, without a doubt. Number 64, Huey Lewis and the News, Perfect World, Pebbles, Mercedes Boy, oh gosh. Gloria Estefan and Miami Sound Machine, 1, 2, 3. And what I can only describe as my next biggest surprise, because here we are at 61, and we have the first entry by some guy by the name of Michael Jackson with Dirty Diana. Remember that one? This is off of Bad. Now, I don't think Bad sold as well as Thriller, but I mean, when we're talking millions of units, does it really matter? But Dirty Diana, that was quite the interesting jam at the time. But here's your 2-second trivia question. Obviously, try not to look it up. And if you know that you go ahead and you say, I knew, over on the Facebook page. Who plays the guitar solo on Dirty Diana? Should I cue the Jeopardy music? I'll give you one more second, listeners. Steve Stevens, Billy Idol's longtime songwriting partner and guitar player. Steve Stevens plays the guitar solo on Dirty Diana. Just giving a little bit of a shout out to Steve Stevens, who I'm not sure always gets the recognition that he deserves as a guitar player. And here we have Pebbles once again with Girlfriend, Roger with I Want to Be Your Man, and another artist who's going to be on here more than once. Very unique individual. Terence Trent D'Arby with Sign Your Name. Now obviously he has one bigger hit, which, spoiler alert, will be on the charts. But this guy was a Renaissance man. He played his instruments, he sang, he danced, had a cool look. But I'm not sure why he didn't do more past this. If anyone knows, shoot some comments over to me. Let me know what happened to Terence Trent D'Arby. And now, a childhood crush, who at this point was like a crush. Not to be confused with Hush Hush. Or Rush? I forget. Anyway, Belinda Carlisle, formerly of the Go-Go's. with her solo debut. And here she is with I Get Weak. Ah, Belinda, you make me weak. Be still my heart. I just remember being in 8th grade music class and just, for whatever reason, I don't know if our teacher, I mentioned before, our teacher did play contemporary music. I just remember Mr. Mister with Kyrie and this being played in class for some reason. And those are 2 different years altogether, but just must be what she was listening to. Here we have U2 with what I consider to be the absolute worst era of U2, other than like modern. And that is Desire. Hated that rattle and hum thing. Looking back, really enjoyed the movie and the live performances. The originals, for the record, just awful. Ugh. Jody Watley, Don't You Want Me? Debbie Gibson, oh, Debbie, out of the blue. Taylor Dane. Now, we started her at, 900. Here she is with Tell It to My Heart, which I think is obviously the bigger hit, and here it is, much higher on the charts. I really enjoyed that song. I thought it was really good. And now, a guilty pleasure. It's not even guilty. Just forget that. It's not a guilty pleasure. I love it. And it has been used so many times because I'm an idiot with like Facebook. Because you remember, I don't even think it still says that anymore. What does it say when you go to Facebook to do a post? What's on your mind? Well, you know what's on my mind? Pure energy. That's right. We have the Information Society with What's on Your Mind, Pure Energy. It's a jam. And I'm always blown away that they're from the US because they seem like they should be this like Brit pop band. But no, they're from Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. And man, that was a killer song. I think I bought one other single from them. I can't recall the name of it. And I definitely listened to the B-side of this. They were enjoyable. Not enough for me to go buy the whole record, but good stuff. The Jets are here again with Make It Real, Pet Shop Boys. Okay, this is the one from Pet Shop Boys that I remember for this time period. What have I done to deserve this? It's the Pet Shop Boys with Dusty Springfield. Now, you know who Dusty Springfield is, right? I'm sure that you do, because she has a couple of really, really famous songs, like Son of a Preacher Man. Yeah, let's see. Kylie Minogue, The Locomotion. I mean, it's a cover, but it is so catchy. It's ridiculous. Oh, my favorite. Chicago. I Don't Want to Live Without Your Love. Richard Marx joins the charts with Shoulda Known Better. INXS is here again with Devil Inside. George Michael with Monkey. Rick Astley with Together Forever. What do you think I was going to do? Rickroll you? Elton John. Okay. I Don't Want to Go On With You Like That is a killer song. When that came out, because like the video, it's like a completely, it's he's with the keyboards, very pop, very of its time. So it was like the evolution of Elton, because he's continuing each decade to move and evolve and grow. Still same songwriting partner with Bernie Taupin. But that song, when it came out, I thought was just the best thing that he had done in a long time. Such a good song. I hope you played that, Carlos. Let me know. The Beach Boys, with the drummer in this video being Full House's own Uncle Jesse. The Beach Boys with Kokomo. And now one of the bands that came up in the 86 episode, and just in general when I talk about the time period of huge bands. And if you want to talk about the bands that are truly doing stadiums, that can do so on their own drawing power. You know, you have a lot of contemporary younger artists that are doing stadiums, but they're packing the bill. And honestly, the Def Leppard, Motley Crue, Poison, that's packing the bill. That's almost like a mini festival. That's a touring festival. But bands that can do it on their own, there's really only a handful of them. And love them or hate them, Bon Jovi is one of those bands. And this is their follow-up to their huge breakthrough album of Slippery When Wet. This is from the New Jersey album, and Bad Medicine. Number 40 is a bit of a, like, legit guilty pleasure, but like a guilty pleasure for like an entire generation of people. Because if you're one of those people who rips this, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You have no soul. Patrick Swayze, featuring Wendy Frazier, She's Like the Wind. It's a snapshot of the time. It truly is. And he does a great job. Now, have I ever watched Dirty Dancing more than the one time? No. Seen it once. I'm good. But just the fact that it's Swayze, who such a Renaissance man in and of himself. He could dance, he could sing, he could act, he could do action. He was the good guy, he was the bad guy, he was the romantic lead. Patrick Swayze, deserved of that legend status that he got to. And just gone way too soon. Truly gone way too soon. So if you haven't heard it in a while, go cue up some She's Like the Wind. 39, you have Red Red Wine by UB40. That's an earworm and a half. Eric Carmen's here again, Make Me Lose Control. I mean, he's a songwriter. That's what he does. He writes really good pop songs. 37, the man who launched a gajillion t-shirts and rip-offs and all types of merch and parodies and teenage boys and probably teenage girls going ahead and slapping on their chests. Of course, I'm talking about Bobby McFerrin. Don't worry, be happy now. Earworm. Legendary. And the guy had no instruments. Now, that shouldn't seem so novel, but in 1988, when all these other artists that I've just mentioned are on there, this guy's just out there doing him, just being himself. And really quite incredible, the career that he has and continued to have, just his own singular performance. So shout out to Bobby McFerrin. Michael Jackson here again with The Way You Make Me Feel. We have the Bangles with their cover of A Hazy Shade of Winter, of course, from the Less Than Zero soundtrack. Talk about legends. Think about that cast. Think about the cast of Less Than Zero. Robert Downey Jr., one of the biggest movie stars in the world. Jamie Gertz, Andrew McCarthy, and James Spader. With that soundtrack, by the way, being done by Rick Rubin. Amazing. Number 34 in the... This is a hard one because there are certain bands that I do have a love-hate relationship with. And one of them is Aerosmith. Because Aerosmith had what was often considered to be the first true rock ballad, right? With Dream On. The real kind of rock ballad. Purposely by design. The power ballad, I should say. Not just a rock ballad, but a power ballad. everything they did in that 80s era, Permanent Vacation on, all of their power ballads are just sickeningly sweet and cliche and, oh, I hate them so much. You know, they had slower tempo songs, but you would not call a song like Janie's Got a Gun a ballad. It's a dark number. But they're Angel. Here we are, Angel. And, don't want to miss a thing. Like, all that stuff. It's just pablum. Bleh. 33, Whitney Houston, Where Do Broken Hearts Go? Debbie Gibson here again with Foolish Beat. Richard Marx, this guy, he's hitting a couple times too. And Eric Carmen with Endless Summer Nights. And here, the first time on the charts, we have Def Leppard with Love Bites at number 30. So this is, of course, the Hysteria era. So one of the episodes, I was talking about them in their Pyromania days. Only reason not making it to the top of the charts was because of some album called Thriller. But here they are. They've come back. Their drummer has had to learn how to play all over again. And after a slow build, bam. As far as the world of quote-unquote hair metal, glam rock, all the bands that were lumped into that, whether they were really part of that scene or not is irrelevant. But you had Def Leppard and Bon Jovi as the real big sellers. Like Poison was doing like 6 million. These guys are doing like 9 or 10 million, 12 million. So this was a huge comeback for them. Phil Collins, A Groovy Kind of Love. Samantha Fox, remember her? Naughty Girls Need Love Too. Yikes. George Michael is here again with Father Figure. That song has so many connotations, and yeah, that was a song. So I think I mentioned before, I didn't have a lot of censorship, but that was one of the songs that even like adults in my life would kind of be like, I don't know about that song. Johnny Hates Jazz. Forgot all about this song existing or them existing with Shattered Dreams. Catchy one. Now, Eric Carmen's here again with, I think, his biggest hit, Hungry Eyes. Richard Marx, Hold On to the Night. Gonna admit it. Here's confession time. Along with Never Tear Us Apart by INXS. Hold On to the Nights by Richard Marx was also on a mixtape or two for a young lady or two. Just putting it out there. Robert Palmer. I mentioned him before as being so popular in the 80s and seemingly doing so very little, but he didn't need to. He could just stand there with his, perfectly coiffed hair and his suits and just models with hair slicked back playing instruments. That's all he needed. Massive songwriting capabilities. Simply irresistible. Debbie Gibson, Shake Your Love. I just can't shake your love. Michael Jackson, he's starting with The Man in the Mirror. I'm not sure if he ever did ask himself to change his ways, but hey, Taylor Dayne, I'll Always Love You. I don't know that one. I know a better, well-known song, I Will Always Love You. Def Leppard. I'm surprised that this is at number 19, given some of the songs that are coming up. So here we are. We're in the top 20 now. I guess I am doing the whole list. Sorry, guys. I'm just enjoying it. Pour Some Sugar on Me is only number 19 because I could have sworn that was everywhere, all day, every day. Flip the channel. Go to the rock station. Pour Some Sugar on Me. Go to the pop station. Pour Some Sugar on Me. Go to the classic rock station. Pour Some Sugar on Me. Wasn't on the country station, but it was on everywhere. So I'm surprised that that's number 19. But it's still a banger, as the kids say. So here's what's so interesting. The Escape Club is here higher with Wild Wild West. Like, you remember that? What a weird song to be so high on the list. Whitesnake, not the song you think. This is This Love, a ballad. Above, Pour Some Sugar on Me. Fascinating. Expose with Seasons Change. Billy Ocean, Get Out of My Dreams, Get Into My Car. Nice, Billy. So, band I mentioned earlier. One of my all-time favorites. Now, I mentioned they did the cover of Don't Be Cruel. And I talked about how they're Cheap Trick. They can do what they want when they want. However, I mentioned the ballads. There was an expectation by the record label to have a ballad, right? And they were kind of like, they're used to writing their own songs, and they write plenty of good ones. They're Cheap Trick. But I will admit, when I first heard this, I thought it was excellent. And they still play it. And I'm not sure if it's begrudging or if they've come to appreciate it, because it certainly did well for them. But at number 14, The Flame by Cheap Trick. Robin Zander's vocals on this. As always, he's amazing. But for a song that he didn't write, he found the emotion in it. He really did. And he committed to it. Because his vocals sound that he's, really deep emotionally connected to it. So kudos to Cheap Trick. I love the song, even if they don't. The performances on there are excellent. The guitar solo by Rick Nielsen is perfect for the song. So I really love it. And it's on a couple of playlists of mine. Oh, shoot, that might have been on a couple of mix CDs too, or tapes. Gloria Estefan, here she is again with Anything for You. And then Terrence Trent D'Arby, Wishing Well. This song is on a number of my playlists. I think it is a bop. Really good. So I've mentioned before that I love a little bit of grit in the voice, And he has that. And when you have it, that grit in R&B and R&B style, oh man, you just can't beat it. I mean, I really felt like he had it, Figured he'd be as big as Prince, big as Michael Jackson. Seemed like he had all the tools to do so. I'm just not sure if he had whatever it is that you need to survive in the music business. But a guy was thriving and surviving. We have George Michael here again with One More Try. Steve Winwood again with Roll With It. Breathe, Hands to Heaven, don't remember. Tiffany could have been, okay. Oh, Belinda Carlisle. Now here's the song. Heaven is a Place on Earth. I mean, it's so good. It's so good. And now I'm sure I said at the time that, I love Belinda Carlisle. Meaning, I love Belinda. Oh, her music's crap, though. I'm sure it was something stupid like that. Guess what? It's not. Great song. Love it. I love that she became this big, huge star, too. And how she had gotten over addictions and, had changed her lifestyle. She had become somewhat, kind of like the National Enquirer kind of stuff, talking about her weight and her habits. And she comes back and she's breathtaking. She's stunning. And she has this great solo record. So props to Belinda Carlisle. Whitney Houston, so emotional. So think about this list and the number of people who have been recurring on this list. And Michael Jackson isn't even in your top 20. the highest he gets is 21. Because instead of Michael Jackson, it's George Michael everywhere on the list. And like Gloria Estefan and Steve Winwood and Whitney Houston. Interesting, right? Number 5. The Big Hit also falls in the ballad category. And also the one song from this band that I remember back then, my mom actually going, well, if he could only sing like that all the time, maybe I'd like it. Guns N' Roses with Sweet Child of Mine. For the longest time, I could still just listen to it. I had it on a couple of mixes that I made. I've kind of fallen out of love with it, to be honest. I think because it had kind of a big resurgence, and people were like, oh yeah, Sweet Child of Mine is a great song. It's really never stopped being on the radio, honestly. But I haven't been able to listen to it lately. Not sure why. Number 4. Are you ready, everybody? Are you ready? I'm never going to give you up. Never going to let you down. Rick Astley with the Rickroll of Never Gonna Give You Up. Huge, huge song. Still is, obviously. And everyone will talk about getting Rickrolled. Does anyone really ever complain about it, though? No. Because it's Rick frickin' Astley. Number 3. Another legend returning to the charts. Not George Michael. George Harrison with Got My Mind Set on You. If you ever needed proof of George Harrison's talent, of his ability to connect with fans and to create great pop music, look no further than Got My Mind Set on You. And also, so I take all that back. And I'm not going to edit it. I'm just going to go ahead and own it and eat it. This is a cover song originally recorded by James Ray in 1962 under the title, I've Got My Mind Set on You. And it's a song, a song written and composed by Rudy Clark. No clue. Never looked this song up before. So now I've just learned something. Okay, well, George Harrison, the first time he heard the song was during a visit to his sister in the U.S. in 1963, 5 months before the Beatles first appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show. Huh. Well, that changes all that. Well, it doesn't change the fact that I love George Harrison and long, one of my favorite Beatles. I mean, there's only 4 of them, but I actually had George at the top for the longest time, but I had to check myself and just admit that it's Paul, because Paul's brilliant. Paul. It's all about Paul. So it's like Paul, George, John, Ringo. Personalities, it's like Ringo, George, Paul, John. But yeah, George Harrison, a cover song, number 3 for 1988. Number 2. Again, I mentioned they had hit all cylinders. In Excess with Need You Tonight. Perfect song. Perfect. Yeah, I think that's it. I have to go back and listen to Kick. Everyone is always on a search for, is there such thing as a perfect album? Where every song, 1 through 10, 1 through 14, 1 through 16, whatever the number of tracks are, that every track is like a B+ or better. Kick might be one of them. So I might do a dive on Kick in a couple of episodes. If you'd be interested in hearing an episode about In Excess, the Kick record in particular, please let me know in the comments, on Facebook, social media, etc. And number 1, which should be no surprise, and a video that I was told to kind of avert my eyes because it was a bit provocative for the time. We have George Michael with the title track from his debut solo album, Faith. This is an amazing pop song. It is a provocative pop song, which is everything you want, right? If you're pushing the envelope in pop music, can you make a really catchy song that people are just going, wait a minute, what did I just hear? It's a really great song. And, well, I mean, it's not like, I want your sex, right? Maybe I'm getting those confused, right? I want your sex. That's the really provocative one, right? Yeah, come on. Yeah, that's the one. Faith is actually a fairly straightforward song. I got to admit, talk about guilty pleasures. If I'm going to put on Faith, don't judge me, folks. I put on Limp Bizkit. I'm a rock guy. I love George Michael. Don't get me wrong. One of my top 10 vocalists ever. George Michael could sing. So just because I listen to Limp Bizkit version of Faith, don't judge me for that. But he was the star. The biggest star on the planet. Nuclear heat, number one with a bullet, as they say, top of the charts guy. So here's the artists that are here over and over again. George Michael, INXS, Whitney Houston, Steve Winwood, Gloria Estefan. There's a couple of them that have onesie-twosies. The Cheap Tricks, Belinda Carlisle, but Eric Carmen, Richard Marx, Debbie Gibson, Def Leppard, all over the place. It's just so interesting. All of these bands that now, some of them could fill out huge venues just by announcing a tour. And it's not just because people of our age listening to them. It's because how good and enduring this music is. I've really been trying to, at my kids' behest, listen to more of their stuff just to see if I can vibe with it, to really feel it. Say, okay, I get why you like it. Some of it I really can't. It's almost anti-pop to me of what's popular. Whereas whether I was heavily listening to guitar-based rock music or not at the time, there's more than one of these songs that fall way outside of that category that I will tell you I've always listened to and always enjoyed. And not in a guilty pleasure kind of way or, okay, don't tell anyone. I mean, there's a few of them on here that I probably owned a single or two that I'm not exactly, super proud of. But like I talked about in the 92 episode, I had Color Me Bad singles. So what are you going to do? At least some of the folks that are on here, even at their cheesiest, are legends in their field. So 1988, it does bring me back so much, more so to that ending of 8th grade for a bunch of this. The ending of 8th grade. Particularly looking at the Guns N' Roses and INXS. A lot of this music, I have such a fond remembrance of. And I don't know, once I decided that I was going to do another year episode, I was really going back and forth about where I wanted to go in the timeline. I was you know what? I got to do more in the 80s. I hone in on 88. So I pull up the list. I glance at it. And as soon as I glance at it, I'm okay, stop reading. Because, I just like to do it on the podcast. And I'm just looking at this list and I'm blown away by these artists that we were blessed enough to have grown up with. And I say blessed because music is a gift. I think music is a gift. And what I've come to really recognize and appreciate as I'm doing the podcast is how much music means to so many people, which is where when you do have some of these I don't know, weaker moments in musical history that I think we have with current pop music, that's where the availability of streaming services is so powerful, because then we can just connect and listen to anything that we want, where we're not bound just by the radio or bound just by making a mixtape or a mix CD. I think that's really a blessing and kind of a cool thing. The one place that you say, technology, what has it done for me as a person who really loves music? This has been a truly really cool time. And the fact that if I was recording music again, if I ever wanted to do that, I don't need much more than the computer that I have right in front of me where I could create music. And that's where there are some interesting things that I think are probably happening in underground circles that I'm unaware of. But what I've also found with the podcast is that the episodes that I do that are really focused on music tend to do really, really well. So I thank all of you for coming and listening to the show and enjoying this content. I do want to do a couple of movies in there, or a couple of movie franchises, just because I enjoy it. And I haven't done enough TV from our generation. So I do have a couple of ideas. So I'm going to post a question sometime this week about some potential topics. And I'm going to do it on Facebook, because nobody's following me on Twitter and hardly anyone is following me on Instagram. But I'm going to put up some questions, just some possible topics, and I ask you to please head over to the page and tell me what you think of what you might want to hear next. So how can you do that? You can follow me on Facebook at Stuck in the Middle, a Gen X podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at StuckPodX. You can email me at stuckinthemiddlepod@yahoo.com. And most importantly, please like and subscribe to the podcast. The podcast is available on most platforms, so please leave your 5-star reviews and subscribe on whatever platform works best for you. And if there's a platform that you can't find the Stuck in the Middle podcast on, let me know, and I can get it added there relatively easily. So, as always, until next time, later, slackers.